Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're taking a look at Solid Swap. This is the new Andre and Dani project that is going to be released pretty damn soon. So we're going to jump through this, try and explain exactly how this is going to work with their new token, which is going to be called ROC. If you enjoy the content and you find it helpful, subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment down below. So this is the user interface. This is just a screen grab. It is not yet live. So this website doesn't work. This is just something Andre has posted a bit earlier. So we can see it's called Solidly and is a swapping protocol. So swap simply with Solid. You can swap, provide liquidity, you can invest your tokens, you can vote, and you can claim rewards. That is all we can see thus far. TLDR, what is this going to do? Essentially, this is here to boost the Fantom ecosystem. It should be symbiotic with other AMMs within the ecosystem as well. So they're not trying to eat the lunch of Spooky Swap and Spirit Swap. This is primarily for protocols to come and plug and play with. And what they're going to be doing is iterating on Curve's token economics and utilizing this ROC token as an emissions token to help boost the fees earned by various protocols on Fantom. We're going to dive into that in just a second. So this is highly iterative tokenomics, introducing aspects from both Curve and Olympus. And this is allowing you to get involved here with two DeFi gods, Andre Cronje and Danielle from Abracadabra Money. So these guys are the brainchilds behind this, and of course their teams as well. So starting here, this is Andre's first Medium article, came out at the start of January. An article to explain how a potential wink emissions-based token could balance ecosystem participants. So standard vested escrow rules apply. If you don't know what VE stands for, that's what it stands for, vested escrow. So as we have VE curve, we're going to have VE ROC here. So a token is transferable and is used for incentives via emissions. A VE version is a non-transferable version and locked up by depositing the base token, i.e. the ROC token, into the voting escrow contract for a period from 1 week to 4 years. The longer you lock, the more voting power you have. And VE lockers vote which permissionless pool should be incentivized. So you can direct these incentive rewards to the pool of your choosing. The VE lockers will accumulate all of the protocol fees. He then defines the total supply equals total token supply. The lock supply is of course the VE total supply, and circulating is the total supply less those locked up supply. So for purposes of this example, assume an initial supply of 20 million tokens and assume a decaying emission of 2 million tokens per week, decaying towards a future cap not yet defined, and then there will just be some low tail emissions afterwards. So 3 important deviations from the standard model here. The weekly emissions are adjusted as a percentage of circulating supply. So if none of the tokens are actually locked into the VE version, the weekly emissions would be 2 million. However, if 50% of the tokens are locked into a VE version, the weekly emissions would be 1 million. And if 100% of the tokens are locked for VE, the weekly emissions would therefore be 0. So as more tokens are vested, the impact of emissions will therefore decrease. And the VE lockers increase their holdings proportionally to the weekly emissions. So if there's 1 million weekly emissions and a total supply of 20 million and a lock supply of 10 million, this would mean 1 million new tokens are minted and provided as incentives, a 5% supply increase. Our goal is to ensure that VE lockers are never diluted, and as such, VE lockers will have their holdings increased by 5%. That is like an Olympus Dao rebase mechanism there. Those VE locks are actually going to be represented as NFTs. This makes them transferable and they could therefore be sold on secondary markets. It says by tokenizing the lock positions, this allows a single address to own more than one lock, and lock balances are cumulative, and each lock contributes to the overall VE balance. This further allows locks to be traded on secondary markets, and it's expected that these will be on Abracadabra Money. So by extending the locks into NFTs, it addresses a capital inefficiency problem of VE assets, as well as addresses concerns over future liquidity. So I think what they're going to do is have the Abracadabra Money market. You could therefore take this NFT and take out a MIM loan against it. So the projects in the Fantom ecosystem that are going to get these locked tokens to kickstart this all up are going to have an array of options on the table here. Conclusion, if all participants lock, emissions decrease to 0. If only 50% of participants lock, emissions is 50%. However, lockers increase proportional to the emissions, thus VE33. Shouts out here to the Olympus team, Curve team, and Tetranode down there as well. So in Andre's second post on Medium, he goes into the fee distribution. So he first talks about Curve. Curve distributes 50% of fees to LPs and 50% of Curve to the Curve holders who lock as VECRV, and they get paid out in stablecoins. So a problem statement here, token emissions are considered a bootstrapping mechanism. When a protocol starts, it usually has no fees. And in blockchains, you need security. This is provided via proof of work or proof of stake. And at the start of a network, it has no fees. Now assume there will be no block rewards and only fees were distributed to validators. Would you run a validator node if receiving no rewards? And of course the answer is no. So instead, these chains are bootstrapped with block rewards. But the goal is for the block rewards to eventually stop, and fees alone should be enough incentives for participants. So the goal that they've come up with is to align emissions to incentives. The problem with a lot of current AMM designs is that it's easier to incentivize liquidity instead of fees. If we consider Curve or Sushi here, they have VE Curve and X Sushi holders. They both receive fees. And at face value, it seems obvious. Just change the incentives, stop incentivizing liquidity, and incentivize the fees. The problem with this is you can lead to wash trading. So it goes on, the goal itself, though, is to simply give the most incentives or emissions. In this version, it'll be the ROC token to the liquidity with the highest fees. If we look at VE Curve, as a VE Curve holder, you'll receive 50% of all fees, regardless of where you vote. So if you're voting for the emissions to go to pools and those pools actually generate zero fees for the protocol, that's pretty useless for the protocol, but you're still going to reap the rewards of the fees generated by other more active pools. So this is where VE33 comes in. We've established a few things. So fees earned by the protocol should go to the lockers. Emissions by the protocol should go to pools with the highest fees, as this is highly more efficient, and the VE3 lockers decide which pools receive those emissions. So we want to align where the lockers vote and ideally have them vote for the pools that generate the highest fees. To accomplish this, we simply need to add one modification onto the popular VE Curve model, and that is the lockers will receive fees only for the pools they vote for. So they're going to think twice about exactly what they're voting for here. This means that VE33 lockers will earn 100% of all fees generated on the pools that they vote for. So participants aligned with protocol fee generation. This has a few benefits. It incentivizes fees for the protocol, great stuff for the protocol. The emissions will promote the highest fee earning pool, which will increase liquidity on those pools to allow for better rates. So this is good for end users, and it aligns emissions with protocol incentives, allowing the participants to self-optimize the system. So this is highly iterative on an already well-established set of tokenomics from Curve, but they've changed things up here. Rather than incentivizing liquidity and liquidity providers, they're incentivizing fees. This will be better for the long-term health of any protocol. So this is really cool stuff. Now, Andre goes on in here to give us some examples. So, of course, not all the protocols are going to be AMMs. There's other types of protocols. For example, Geist is a lender. So this is like the Aave on Fantom. And fees are generated by users borrowing in this example. So they will vote for emissions on assets with the highest borrow rates, which will incentivize more borrowing due to increased incentives, which earns more fees. Thus, Ouroboros. I had to Google what this is. Ouroboros is an emblematic serpent of ancient Egypt and Greece, represented with its tail and its mouth, continually devouring itself and being reborn from itself. And then in the second example with an AMM, fees are generated by an AMM by trading. So if you're Spirit Swap, the more trade, the more fees you get. So these guys will be voting for emissions on pools with the highest trade volume. This will incentivize more liquidity for that pool, which improves trade quotes, which increases trade volume and thus earns more fees. So the VE Curve model popularized paying out fees in stablecoins. This in itself changes how participants think about fees. This changes the thinking of owning Curve as a denominated value, such as US dollars, to instead as a percentage of fee ownership. If Curve price goes down, you can purchase a cheaper claim on greater percentage of stable fees. i.e., you own Curve, you can own access to revenue. So step one is to provide fees in an asset not correlated to the primary system asset. This means that by owning a percentage supply, you're taking a bet on future fee growth of that protocol. So this is the ethos here. Andre describes his experience with Yearn and his regret in its original design that it was selling the incentive tokens from the primary asset of the vault at scale, we have seen how this parasitic nature can lead to deprecation of the underlying assets, in fact, killing its own source of income. Instead, I've always preferred mutualistic vaults or 3-3 vaults, one where the underlying asset isn't sold but simply passed on to the user. So with that in mind, VE33 does not distribute fees in the native token, nor as a stablecoin, but instead as the asset in which the fee was accrued. And these are simply passed on. So we believe this to be in the spirit of 3-3 and hope to see more adoption of this distribution mechanism in the future. So some stats on this new AMM Solid Swap. The fee is just 0.01%. It natively supports swaps between closely correlated assets via a new curve. It natively supports swaps between uncorrelated assets as well, so pretty much any cryptocurrency. Fees are paid out in base assets, not converted. Uniswap v2 compatible interfaces, and with it you get permissionless support for gauges and bribes. So this is opening up those curved tokenomics designs to all that engage with this. I'll drop this down below so you can read through all of these general benefits in your own time, but if we just scroll down here, current AMMs need a few modifications to make it easy for protocols to leverage them. They must be able to easily add token incentives to your liquidity. They must be able to easily bribe token emissions onto your liquidity. They must be able to accrue fees from liquidity you incentivize and must be able to permissionlessly deploy your liquidity. So with the above in place, any protocol or project can easily incentivize their own liquidity, be it for their token, their stablecoin, or even other derivatives, and while doing so, they fully accrue the fees here. So as they say, the AMM arena is quite saturated. We did not want to launch an AMM to compete with existing projects, and for that reason it was designed with protocol to protocol architecture in mind. So this will be something protocols come and plug and play with. So just 7 hours ago, Andre posted this. We're nearing deployment of Solidly on Fantom mainnet, so all systems are going to go soon. There was a snapshot on the 23rd of January as to who was receiving the initial distribution of these NFT tokens. And as Jack posts here, rock designers also wanted to incentivize adoption on Fantom. This is why they propose to distribute the new token based on a snapshot of top TVL from DeFi Llama for the top 20 protocols. And this creates a flywheel effect, bringing new users and capital over to Fantom, which we've seen in abundance. Now this snapshot has been complete, and these are the protocols getting these VE Rock non-fungible tokens, and there's the list here. There's actually not 20 but 25 in total, and you can see the list here posted up just earlier. Now there was a bit of shenanigans around this. There's a war unfolding in real time for the VE NFT on Fantom, the Vampire War they call, the snipe attempt from VE Dao, and then a fight back from a union of Fantom protocols, OX Dao. So VE Dao saw the opportunity to get some of these NFTs for just piling a load of quick TVL onto the Fantom mainnet. And they did that successfully, and they actually got some NFTs coming to them. And what happened is the TVL just skyrocketed over here on Fantom at the start of the year, around 5 billion up to around 15 billion. And you can see the list here, multi-chain number 1 for TVL. The second is OX Dao. So this is the combination of like 5 or 6 projects from Fantom who banded together to try and suck the liquidity out of VE Dao, which is down here. So this is the kind of parasitic one that just popped up. It managed to gain like $600 million in TVL. As you can see, that's now dropped down to 174 million. So they were just in it for those tokens. This is the game theory you're going to get with any new token launch. It's never going to be perfect, but very interesting to see the community of projects creating their own DAO there to try and knock those guys out. Now over on the GitHub, if you go into Solidly contracts, tests, and then the token contract, you can see within this, Anyswap router is quoted many times over. So this AMM that's being created here is plugging into Anyswap on the back end. So this means they can take liquidity from all different chains, and I do think that this will go cross-chain as a result of just seeing that. So therefore, looking at this from a different perspective, clearly Anyswap, or multi-chain as it's now called, is going to be a key component to this, and there will be a ton of transactions being driven through this. You can see it here in the contracts. So multi-chain could be a net huge beneficiary to this new product going live, and I imagine SolidSwap is going to open up to all chains and allow permissionless transfer of liquidity across different chains, and so the net beneficiary here could be multi. So this is definitely one to have your eyes on at this moment in time. I would also highly recommend checking out Frog Radio down here. They had both Andre and Dani on last week to explain what's going on with this. They give the full background of the curve wars and how the curve token design was utilized and then iterated upon to create what they have here, VE33 or VE Rock. as I believe it will be called. So there's going to be a new AMM in town, and it's going to allow these Fantom projects to start emitting these rock rewards as they wish onto the pools of their choosing. This is going to allow for less dilution of their own native tokens, give them an incentive mechanism to boost fees for their protocol, and overall the health of the Fantom ecosystem, if this is successful, will be very positive. So this is brand new, highly speculative, highly innovative stuff, and it's going to be really exciting to see how this plays out. As soon as SolidSwap is up and running and we have some data to work with, I will recover this once again just to see how it's getting along. But early here in 2022, we're seeing iterative tokenomic designs and brand new projects being born to help emerging ecosystems. So pretty incredible stuff. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, drop me a comment down below, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.